Nothing earth-shaking or particularly new. My universe, my rules. I don't have an editor. I did run it through spell check. If you are looking for BTB, look elsewhere. If you are looking for hot wife, look elsewhere. 2 out of 10 on the sex meter. Cornelius is a real suburb of Charlotte, North Carolina. Chess checkers. Idiom for making things simpler or more hard. Chess is playing secretive, hard, and strategic. Checkers is simple with much less strategy. Vegas revelations. Friday, April 28, 2023. I walked into our bedroom at noon and my gut tied in knots as I looked in. My wife was packing and headed to Vegas for a bachelorette party. What happens in Vegas stays in Vegas and all that horse shit. If it wasn't that it was for her damn sister, Sarah, I would have objected more, but I understood even though I hated it. Family is important and I understand that. Since she was going, my problem was that I did not have $1,000 extra to have my wife followed by a PI and there was no way I could fly out and go all super spy. I know my wife, Jessica, had no intention of cheating and it probably won't happen. I will probably win playing Russian roulette. I don't do that either. I love my life and I'm content in my life, damn it. Las Vegas. It's not that our suburb, Cornelius, doesn't have predators or Lotharios seeking sex with married women. Every place has predators and Lotharios, but Las Vegas has more of them, and certainly, more were higher level. Throw in alcohol and the fact that it is a bachelorette weekend away from husbands and you have an ugly storm of possibilities. I'll give you the short version of me and my wife. My wife and I did the meet in college thing, meeting at the library as the seat next to me was one of the few free so close to finals. I wouldn't call it love at first sight, but it was chemistry at first sight. I saw her, she saw me. A smile. Another smile. By some miracle, I did not hesitate and said the massively awesome pickup line of all times, "Hi." I was 20 at the time, she was 18. We talked and it felt nice so we walked outside. I suggested a walk to the center quad and she smiled. We held hands and it felt natural, like her hand was the one I was supposed to be holding. It felt good and it felt right. We knew. We just did. It wasn't love, but we kissed and I knew I was looking into the eyes of my future wife. I remember that night with the moon over us we kissed. The chemistry was electric. She smiled, "You're him. You are the guy that I am going to marry." I felt a burden fall from my shoulders. I had found my wife. It took 4 dates to have sex even though we both knew we were destined to marry. She later told me she wanted to do it on the 3rd, but she wanted to be on the pill and you have to wait for a new cycle for it to work. My skin and hers, wet, body heat, hot breath. Magic. We fell fast and hard. The L word came barely 3 weeks in. We were simply hand in glove made for each other. Oh, right. Hi. I'm Michael Mandel. I'm 32 years old and my wife, Jessica, is 30. I'm an outside sales rep for a major trucking firm. I'm 6 foot, a bit above the median in looks but no model. I have medium brown hair and hung like a horse. I'm not fat and we work out at the Y 4 days a week as a family because the Y has family memberships for a very reasonable amount. It's a good lesson for our daughter to stay fit and healthy if she sees us working on it. My wife, Jessica, is a marketing rep for a hardware company. She arranges the ads, the radio spots, and their web stuff. She has a pretty face, more on the cute side than hot. She keeps her dark brown hair at shoulder blade length and I know she does it for me and I know it is a pain for her to take care of. She does it for me. You give. You get. I married up just a bit but not so much people wonder why she is with me. She is 5'5" and 120 pounds and I appreciate that she worked hard to get rid of the baby weight, and yes, I know that is hard work for women. She still has a bit of her baby pooch and she's self-conscious about it, but you can only see it if she is sitting and I only notice when she sighs and then makes a comment about it. You're doing math and realizing she was 22 when we had our daughter. Yeah, antibiotics, screw up birth control pills and hello Emily, and a tubal ligation. We had a bit of a scare at the end and the doctors said we were done at 1 child. Jessica was 8 months along when she graduated college 2 years after me. We married in a civil ceremony a week after finding out. There was fear, of course, but we always knew we were destined to marry, so this was just moving the time earlier. Back to the present. I had our 8-year-old daughter to take care of while she was away. My guts were in knots and there was not a thing I could do about it. Call me a suspicious chauvinistic bastard. Bachelorette plus drinking plus Vegas equals bad idea. I don't take chances in my marriage. As I said, I'm an outside sales rep for a major trucking firm. Schmoozing people and taking them to lunch is half of my job, and I am great at my job. The other half is getting damage claims pushed through for damaged freight when the recipient didn't do their due diligence and inspect the incoming freight. Too many times, a bored employee just pulls the item off the trailer and signs for it without even glancing at the fact someone clearly ran a forklift into whatever they just got. For my schmoozing lunches, I am never alone with a female client in anything more romantic than Applebee's. It does not hurt that I am addicted to their beer pretzels appetizer, and many times, that is my lunch. If I am taking a woman to lunch, I make it a point to text my wife who I am with, their employer, and why I am at lunch with her. It's a second nature habit for me. I love my life and I love my wife. I am transparent to her in all communications and contacts. I had taken the Friday off, so I drove into Charlotte Douglas Airport and gave my wife my best attempt at a smile as I stopped the car at departures and retrieved her suitcase from the trunk. 10 years in, she could read me like a book. She gave me a bit of a sad smile back. Michael. Trust me. Okay. I looked down. I'm sorry. She pecked me on the lips, then stroked my cheek. Michael. You put me on this impossibly high pedestal that no woman can live up to being perched on. She kissed me a bit firmer, and I happen to like the view from up there. Okay? If I ever fall from that pedestal, I know I can never climb back up. What can I say? I love that view from so high up. I gave her a smile and I still could not fake it. She looked at me. Michael. I love you. I love our daughter and I love my life. She turned before I could fake another smile and wheeled her suitcase inside the terminal. She didn't want to look back and see my fake smile. Yeah, I know. I'm an insecure jerk. I was able to put bad thoughts aside mostly during the day. I had stuff to get done around the house and my daughter needed help with her homework. My daughter is 8 years old, in 3rd grade, and she had 2 hours of homework. She's 8 years old with 2 hours of homework on a Friday. Well, it did keep me distracted. We went out for pizza and finished by getting extra large chocolate milkshakes at Dairy Queen. I am an expert on being an irresponsible dad, spoiling the shit out of my daughter. We were headed out the door on the way to Antonio's Pizza at 6 that evening when my wife texted me a selfie and that she was leaving for their first stop on a bar crawl. I hated that. She was wearing a fairly sexy dress. Yes, I had seen the dress a half dozen times and it was right above the knee for length. She had a super sexy one. That one was reserved for our special nights out. Yes, I looked and that dress was indeed still in the closet. I love her dress. I received a text and a few pictures for every new place they went. The first place was called Tahiti something. She sent a few pictures. It was more a bar than anything and it looked kind of grungy and old. It did not seem like they were there for very long because I got a text only a bit later that they were going elsewhere. She sent several pictures of the next place they went. The second place was called Sherry Shenanigans and was about halfway between a bar and a dance club. I will say that it looked a lot newer and nicer. There was a dedicated dance floor, but the seating area and bar were larger. They were there a while, then I got a text they were moving on and I got more pictures a bit later. It was the third one they went to at 9 that night, called Attractions, that was a concern. It was straight up a dance club. Just the place I had hoped they wouldn't go. I looked it up online. A pickup joint dance club if I've ever seen one. At 10 I got an update text and they were still at Attractions. I got drunk but no too badly. I dance with Stephanie. Yes, I turned on all the guys how asked. Yeah, drunk, and her autocorrect had changed some of the words from her reduced drunk typing skills. There were no more texts by the time I went to bed at 11. I just wanted the damn trip to end. Jessica had never given me the slightest hint of cheating, but yeah, I was Captain Insecure. I was able to get to sleep 4 hours later and I slept like shit. Drinking spouses in a pickup joint is a terrible idea. I don't care what you say. Couples should never enter one of those without their spouse. I am not my wife's jailer. I have to admit, I wanted to be her jailer that night. Saturday, April 29, 2023. I woke up in a pissed mood and headed off to piss. I got up before my daughter and walked into the living room still in a grumpy mood. I had left my phone there last night so I picked it up. There was a text right after midnight, 12:01 to be exact. I left. There was a text at 5 minutes after midnight, at room. There was a selfie of her in her room. She looked more than a bit drunk. Not falling down drunk, but those blurry eyes. There was another text at 12:15, going to bed. There was another selfie of her from the armpits up. She gave me 3 wishes on our wedding day and I picked that one as number 1. You will always sleep naked without exception. Yes, I know I'm a lucky guy and she now prefers it. I would have loved to get them. I'll take the win I am allotted. I love waking up and pulling her body to mine, then spooning her. She loves it too. As I said, I am happy. I started having worse thoughts. Why had she sent me those pics? I assumed guilt. I was sitting there with an unhappy stomach when I got another text, FLT 1304 arriving Charlotte 3:30 p.m. today. What the? She was due back Sunday. I called her immediately. It went to voicemail. My heart sank like a stone. I called again, it rang and I was afraid it would go to voicemail. She answered on the 4th ring and I asked anxiously, what is going on? I feared the worst. A woman drunk at a bachelorette in Vegas is an awful combination. She was crying when she barely squeaked out, hello. Sank like a stone was a treat compared to how I was feeling. I repeated, what is going on? She was sobbing, I can't say. I just need to come home. I asked, Jessica, you are scaring the crap out of me. She was sobbing softly now, I can't say why. There was a long pause, just pick me up. She hung up. Her last sentence was a bit rude and a demand, not a request. I received a text at 10 after 10, they are telling us to shut off phones. We will take off soon. I was good. I promise. I know it should have helped, but that last message did not help my stomach one bit. It felt like a preemptive excuse for something that did happen. The shit hit the fan about a half hour later. My cell rang, Michael Mandel? I answered, yes. There was a big sigh and the guy's voice wavered a bit, I think you would like to know. Our wives cheated last night. Wham! My stomach got even worse. I hear about guys barfing at this point, but that was not it for me. It was just a feel like acid indigestion, but like I had drunk the acid out of my car's battery. I didn't think it was possible, but yeah, worse. Much worse. The caller's name was Tom and he was the husband of a friend of her cousin Stephanie. He found my number on a contact list the women had shared. He asked me for my email and gave it to him. He asked that I not broadcast anything as he was part of coordinating a confrontation for the following afternoon at 4 o'clock by all husbands involved. 5 minutes later I received a link to a Google Drive folder and I downloaded it. There were pictures. Bad pictures. Hundreds of bad pictures. Her cousin Stephanie's phone was linked to their Apple iCloud account and set to upload in real time. Tom's story was that Stephanie's husband stopped getting updates at 9 the last evening, so started looking around for clues by 1 in the morning. All he needed was to look at their Apple account and he found what he was looking for. He got more worried as his wife's phone kept going directly to voicemail. I started to go through them, mentally going through the list. Split savings, freeze the credit cards, call a lawyer. Why do women have to cheat on a damn Friday? Why could I find out on a Monday so I can get the divorce moving? There were 2 files, one marked, dance club pics, some bad, and the other marked, party room, very bad. I went to the party room folder. The pics were, well, there was a party room or something. It was a large room that looked like a living room but fancy with marble floors and walls. In the background out the windows, I could tell wherever it was that it was at least 10 stories up and probably more. The first few pictures started with drinking shots. There were guys manhandling various women in the party several photos later. One guy unzipped a dress as part of a series of action shots. 2 photos later she appeared to be dancing wearing only a thong and heels. Yeah, nice boobs. 5 shots later, I learned she had recently had a Brazilian wax. Another woman had her dress around her waist. The rest of the women were still dressed, but that did not last long. Another 40 pictures later, all but one had lost their dresses. It was in a very bad place. Whoever was taking the pictures was unsteady at best and the pictures had time stamps further apart. I confirmed it was her cousin Stephanie taking the pictures when I saw she took selfies of herself stripping off. Honestly, how stupid was Stephanie? Or drunk? Both obviously. My world fell apart. Divorce for sure. Wait. Then, I noticed something. I looked. At first, I was looking at the subject matter and the acts and panicking, not being logical. Jessica was only in 2 of the pictures taken after they left the club, number 3 and number 7, and she was fully clothed in the background and alone. The timestamp on number 7 was 11:55 p.m. I looked at my text history, and she had texted me at 1 minute after midnight. Then it clicked. Relief flooded into me. I was so low and suddenly I wasn't. I double-checked. I triple-checked the backgrounds of every shot. I took an hour and a half of going through shot by shot. I damn near lost my mind in relief. Jessica was not in any of the pictures after number 7. She had left. She was in her room minutes later and going to bed. She could have faked it, I guess, and gone back, but I believed. I chose to believe she had held her boundaries, and I could find no evidence to the contrary when there was piles of evidence on the other women. I wasn't overly happy with her going to some kind of private club room or something, but I could deal with that one. I was seriously kind of losing it for a while. Emily was at a friend's house while I was at the airport parking the car when I got a text at 3:40. Blame door open. I was good, but don't ask about the trip. I got another one following up, do not ask. Shutting phone off. Obviously, she did not want a debate text from me. I was waiting at the front of security. She saw me and I saw a storm of conflicting emotions. Then she broke. She just broke and ran the last 10 feet into my arms and I held her close. She dropped her carry-on and sobbed, and I mean hard. People gave us concerned looks and I took her off to the side and sat on a bench. Her eyes were very red. She said, "Never bring up this trip." It was a very sorrowful demand. I looked at her, I know what happened. She sat there, clearly calculating her response. I could have played it like a chess game, probing her and what she knew. I went checkers on her. Yeah, I went Mr. Softy for her. I love her and was going to end that torment in her mind. I held her hands. Last night Stephanie was taking pictures. Late last night, her husband got suspicious and found photos. Bad ones. She softly cried. I got up and held out a hand. She took my hand in hers, which I squeezed softly. We walked to baggage claim, then to short-term parking, then to the car silently, and we got in. I started driving, leaving her to sort out her conflicted mind. She was silently looking out the window as she realized her phone was still off, so she turned it on. Ping, 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 ping. She looked at her texts as they rolled in and I saw her stiffen as she started reading. I looked over at her face. There was a tear in her eyes, then it rolled down her cheek. A minute later, she lost it again and sobbed. Fecal matter was hitting the rotating air-moving device. The betrayed husbands had obviously done very well in coordinating their response. I let her digest the texts as they rolled in. Even after the initial flurry, she was getting one every minute or so. She just stared at her phone. I figured she was watching her sister, cousins, and friends' lives implode. We got home. Emily saw us drive in and came home, wanting to see her mom, MOM. Emily ran to her mom, then saw Jessica's face and almost panicked. What is wrong, Mom? I interposed myself. Your mom got sick. Go play. Emily did not buy it, but nodded and went to her room after hugging her mom and, I love you, Mommy. Jessica smiled, even if a bit weakly. Her daughter's heartfelt words were salve for her injured soul. I looked at Jessica. Jess, you were not going to tell me. Were you? She mistook my question for an accusation. She looked at me furiously. I was good. She stood there daring me to say it again. She was not lying about being good. She bad at lying anyway. I sighed. I meant, you were going to cover, or at least not say anything. She paused and looked down, then nodded. She said, almost whispering, Maddie was dancing with this guy in that suite. Dirty dancing. His hands were inside her dress. He pulled the straps down and she danced like that. I saw that and left. I'm not sure they even saw me leave. Others were doing similar at my last look as I walked out. I nodded. The texts? She thought for a second. I told her, I will show you what I know if you show me what you have. Jess, I know more than you, and most of the other women are going to be divorced shortly. I want to get past this and we can, but I need to put that awful night together in my mind or I will always wonder about the what-ifs. She nodded, then opened her phone and handed it to me with her texts open. I took her to our computer and opened my email. She showed me hers, so I showed her mine. She cried, then said, please, don't divorce me. What the? I wasn't wild about her going to that suite, but it was not a marriage-ending transgression for me. Honestly, not even close. I went over, then sat in my recliner, then reclined back. I looked at her and then held my arms open. She said nothing, but crawled onto my lap, then I wrapped my arms around her. We stayed that way for an hour. Emily came in wanting dinner because it was late. I hate paying the extra, but I ordered through DoorDash for Arby's. We all love the sandwiches, so it was an easy choice. I added a $10 tip and a note: "Get here in less than half an hour and I will hand you an additional $20. The sandwiches arrived 20 minutes later, delivered by a young pimple-faced kid who was banging on our door furiously. $20 well spent. We did not bring anything up until later that night after Emily had gone to bed. I said, "We have to talk about this." She nodded but then shook her head. "Tomorrow. If I talk about it tonight, I will lose my mind." I nodded as I truly believed she had not been with those men, and she did not say no. She just needed some space to process, and I was good with that. I suggested we go to bed early and cuddle. She knew it was a naked cuddle. We both love it because there is simple magic in spooning her body against mine. Then I closed my arms to surround her completely. I held her for 2 hours. She cried a bit periodically. I just kept my arms wrapped around her. It was around 10 when she started to calm down. She relaxed more and more and melted back into me as she would scooch back every once in a while, almost trying to merge her body into mine. Every time she did that, I tightened my hug. As she drifted off, I told her, "I love you, Jess." I felt her go slack as exhausted sleep finally took her. Sunday, April 30th, 2023. I woke up with Jessica looking at me. I could see sadness in her eyes, and love. She smiled weakly, then stroked my cheek and kissed my nose. "I love you, Michael." Emily knocked on the door. We had a house rule. Yes, Emily knew how we slept, but we did not flaunt it. It was a simple rule: knock and we will answer when we can. I put my boxers on and Jessica put on her robe, and when done, we answered. Emily was hungry. Jessica looked at me intently, then said, "This afternoon." I agreed, and we did the parent thing for our daughter, then took her to the park. I was surprised it took too long, but Jessica received a call from her mother about her sister and asked about us. She looked at me as she said, "We are fine, mostly." I nodded. She said, "We will get through." It was kind of a question the way she said it and looked at me, but I nodded. They talked for a while. Sarah's wedding in 2 weeks was off and Stephanie was headed for divorce. Jessica looked more and more distraught as she talked to her mom. I called my parents and asked them to come get Emily. I gave a brief overview of the shitstorm that was happening and assured them that Jessica and I were fine. Once my parents had Emily, Jessica looked at me contemplating, then just started talking. She had agreed to talk and was now going to fulfill her part of the bargain when I backed off the night before. We got to our hotel and I went into my room to change. I texted you when we started our night. The first place we went was called Tahiti Tom's. It was kind of a dive, but Brittany said she had heard it was great. It sucked actually. I had a very small, very awful pina colada and we left. The next place was called Sherry Shenanigans. It was better and I had a rather good mimosa than another. Honestly, it was too loud in that bar and Stephanie suggested we go to a place called Attractions. We were there for about an hour. I realized I was definitely drunk, but I could still walk and talk and I slowed down on my drinking. I fended off a dozen guys asking me to dance, but did dance with Stephanie and later Carrie. It was pretty fun, actually. Guys tried to cut on, but most took a quick hint. One was a bit overly persistent and I had to tell one just to go away, but he did. At about 11 this really good-looking guy shows up with like 8 or 10 other men. All very good-looking. She paused and looked up. I'm sorry. I shrugged. I was well aware there were men better looking than me. She sighed then continued, "Well, Brittany starts gushing, that is Carl Albertson. I learned he was on Dancing with the Stars." I shrugged. Jessica brought out her phone and brought up a web page about him. Shit, the guy was almost good enough looking to turn me gay. Dark blonde hair, and blue eyes, looks like the guy on a romance novel cover. A Norse, well actually turns out Swedish god. She continued, "Well, he had his friends with him and they, were really good, looking. Ava just started flirting with Carl and I mean hard. I did not like it, then she danced with him. The men started trying to pair up with us. One guy named John tried to talk to me. I barely responded and he took the hint and went to Stephanie. There was dancing and flirting. Carl suggested we go to his suite. He was performing at the hotel in a dance show. He has a private elevator behind a desk with a security guard in front of it. We went up and his suite was huge. All marble and fancy with a big living room. We weren't there long when things started heating up. The guy that Maddie was with was some kind of director or something. He put his hands inside her dress and she did not object. I was shocked. Then he pushed the top of her dress down and I realized I needed to leave. I panicked, but I thought, I have to make sure Michael knows I didn't do anything. She looked at me and said, somehow I knew it would come out. I wasn't going to tell anyone, but I had to make sure you knew I kept my vows. I went to my room and then got ready for bed. Those 2 pictures I sent, somehow I knew they would prove me innocent. I leaned back and nodded, digesting the story. It lined up with what she had said and I found no holes. Then I smiled. She looked at me, you believe me? I nodded, yeah. You scared the shit out of me. I truly was making a mental list for divorce when I got that call before I could figure things out. She looked stricken. You would do that? Divorce me? Even after 10 years? I nodded. Look. I cannot say I am happy you went up to the suite, but I can deal with it and honestly, you are forgiven. It was a bonehead move, but you were with 11 bigger boneheads and were just following. She looked at me, but after 10 years, if I had. I shook my head. Look. Jess, I'm not wired to share. You promised me I had exclusive access to your body and that is one thing that would just wreck me. Your body is mine and mine is yours. I take my vows to you seriously. She looked at me after I stopped. You've what? I sighed. I've had a couple of opportunities. Older women, well, older than me, usually in their 40s or early 50s, offering me more of their business if I would be an escort for this or that. Black tie charity shit. I converse well and it plays with customers and some customers are women. I just don't pursue anything. She sat back trying to digest the news. She got hit on far more than I did, but it did happen. I'm not a troll, I can converse reasonably well, and I smell good. She looked at me. That time the invitation for the Breast Cancer Society of Greater Charlotte arrived? I nodded. It was an invitation for me, not us. She sighed. Shit. I was mad at you for turning it down. I sighed. Would you have let me go, knowing it was Deborah Karstens was my date? Even if it was platonic? I used the word platonic in air quotes. She shook her head almost violently. Certainly not. I said, exactly. By the way, she made it very clear it was anything but platonic, but she would be discreet. She leaned back and sighed. You did that for me? I nodded. I did that for us. You realize I'm happy, right? She sat back thinking, then realized, shit. You lost that account. I nodded, and now you know why. She looked at me. What other secrets do you have? Shit. I told her the other 2 times I had been propositioned directly, but those did not have the far-reaching implications and I was polite in the way I turned them down. I left out the indirect times it happened. She then told me about the promotion she had turned down from her boss at the last place she had worked. Now I knew why she had suddenly changed jobs when she had apparently liked her job. She was afraid I was going to go all Rambo and get myself sent to prison, so she took herself out of the situation. She was very pretty. If she talked about every time she was hit on, we would be there for a month. She asked me about that night she was out. I admitted I was insecure and worried about her stepping out. She said it hurt, but I reminded her she was the only one of the Vegas party whose relationship was not in immediate danger. She asked me for my version of the rest of the night. Fair is fair. As you know, I was in a bad place. The whole bachelorette thing, getting drunk in Vegas, is just such a bad idea. Anyway, Emily had a shit ton of homework Friday night. Honestly, 2 hours of homework on a Friday for a 3rd grader. Well, we got through it. Then I took her to get pizza and then some chocolate milkshakes. She looked at me. You spoiled our daughter. I smiled. Damn right I did. She sighed then smiled. You are such a dad. You love her. I smiled back. Right I do. Jessica kissed me and a bit more than chased. You keep doing that. She adores you. I continued. So, I got that text before 11 and honestly, they made things a bit worse as you were clearly drunk texting. She nodded. Yeah, drunk. Not quite falling over, but drunk. I tossed and turned. I finally fell asleep like 4 hours later. I got up that morning, looked at my phone and saw your texts from around midnight. I was immediately thinking, why did she send that? My mood got worse, not better. A bit later I got a phone call from one of the husbands. Stephanie's husband had forwarded him the pictures from Stephanie's phone. He looked me up on a contact list. Jessica shook her head, shit. Stephanie taking pictures sure was stupid. I nodded, but with a dozen of you, I kind of doubt that it would have stayed hidden. She nodded. The phone call basically said everyone had cheated and he forwarded me a link to the photos. You are in 2 photos near the beginning of the time in that suite. I was losing my mind and panicking at that point because the pictures kept getting worse as I went through them. I love my life and it looked like it was over. Then I realized something was nagging at me and I realized you were only in 2 very early photos. I looked at the timestamp and everything lined up. That and your texts painted the picture just like you told me. You saw a risk and you got away from that risk. I sighed, man, that hurt when I thought you had joined in with your cheating friends. You have no idea how big my relief was when I pieced everything together. After I talked about my night and how I had found it, she looked at me. She looked down and sighed. This was serious or bad, or both. I steeled myself and she said, I was tempted. That was not exactly news. The one guy was rich, great-looking, and famous, and it appeared the other guys were just rich and good-looking. I did not like the words and they stung, but it was not a crushing revelation. All humans are tempted at points. I nodded carefully. We needed a heart-to-heart talk and that meant hearing things that might hurt, but were obviously true. I sighed, go on. She steeled herself. The men were all a bit younger, in their early 20s and good-looking. She was obviously trying to word it right, I mean. I saw Maddie being fondled and I got right up and left. But before we even went up, I looked at those men. She looked down and said, I wondered what it would be like to have an adventure like that with one of them. You and me, are so boring. Ouch. Big ouch. At least she said we. She looked at me and quivered a bit, I'm such a good girl. She said it like it was poison. I nodded, she said. We do the same things over and over and over. I need some adventures, but with you. I could deal with that. It was 9 as I tucked Emily into bed. Jessica was waiting in our room as I entered. She was smiling at me, face up, hips relaxed and apart. Mr. Happy was very happy very quickly. She did give me instructions, super soft and super long. I need to feel you. I need to couple with you. She pulled my face down to hers. We kissed. It was very intense and she was purring and moaning quite a bit. 10 minutes later, the experience was intensely satisfying, like a deep soaking all-day rain. We showered together and then got into bed. She faced away and then scooched into me as I wrapped my arms around her. She fell asleep in my arms.